Welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, where we highlight the latest trends in law office and legal practice management to help you run your firm. Brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center. You're listening to Legal Talk Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, recorded from the 2019 Florida Bar Annual Convention in Boca Raton, Florida. This is Karla Eckhardt, and I'm the co-host for today's show.
This is Renee Thompson. I am also your co-host today. I am a member of the Board of Governors and the incoming technology chair for the Florida Bar.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining me today, Renee. And our guest today is Anessa Santos. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, ladies.
Thanks for being
here. We're excited. So today we will be discussing blockchain, fintech, and current applications in law. You just came out of a seminar. But before we get onto our topic, tell us a little more about yourself.
Okay, so I've been practicing law in the state of Florida for 16 years, and I specialize in representing technology startups and scale-ups that are usually developing out a proprietary patent portfolio or a proprietary intellectual property portfolio. Sometimes it may involve trade secrets or copyrights, trademarks, a mix thereof. And if they're starting up or if they're scaling up, I help them from idea to exit.
So let's start with the basics. What is blockchain?
Everyone says it, but we're not sure if everyone knows what they're saying.
Yeah, that is the big question. And it was a lot more challenging for me to answer this same question last year when I gave a presentation on blockchain. But now I've had a lot more practice. So the good news is I can break it down super easy. Blockchain is a handy-dandy new methodology for managing data. So whatever the data is, whether it's a record of a digital transaction that you made, exchanging some kind of digital currency like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple for another digital currency, or whether you're exchanging one digital currency for fiat, which would be a government-backed currency like the US dollar or the euro or the British pound. And when you record it on a blockchain, what's really exciting about it is how it records and stores that information for later recall. A blockchain network is supposed to be largely decentralized, so much so that the participants would be geographically diverse so that you can't identify who's in charge, who's in control. So who controls the internet? Who's the president of the internet? Is there a board of directors over the internet? No. And so if a blockchain is sufficiently decentralized, there is no central governing power like for Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so the reason why this is so exciting and so important to understanding why everyone is all gung-ho over blockchain is because the information becomes immutable. It leaves an audit trail. It's resistant to fraud and tampering because whatever the transaction is that you did on a blockchain and is recorded there gets replicated throughout every single network participant. And so the information is repeated and stored over and over and over and over again. So if you've got thousands of participants on the network, then there's thousands of copies of the record. And because of this, it's really resistant to fraud, tampering, change. And so you've got this grand audit trail of everything that was ever done on that blockchain. And that's why folks are so excited about it.
And how could attorneys apply that in the practice of law? How exactly is blockchain infiltrating the legal profession?
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess the easy answer is it's absolutely everywhere. So when you think about how the internet has infiltrated every single area of our lives, and now we're hearing a lot about data security, data privacy, and the data footprints that we're leaving around the internet while we're traipsing around, and the emails that we send, and the digital audio files and the video files from our cell phones and the social media, and it's just all out there, right? And that's infiltrated every area of our lives and our practice, and it's completely transitioned our practice from paper to digital. We're seeing the exact same thing happen with blockchain. So one use case in particular that's a big favorite for us blockchain lawyer enthusiasts to talk about, which can really bring it on home to every single member of the bar, is with a real estate transaction. So when you think about when you have to do a title search on the property that you're about to purchase, or maybe you're getting ready to sell your property, you have to do a title search over and over and over again. Every time that property changes hands, you have to go back and you have to hire a reputable company that's licensed to do the title search for you. And then if you're putting a mortgage on that property, then you also have to have title insurance. if the chain of title for that house were to be completely recorded and stored on a decentralized blockchain, then it's one and done. That's it. It's forever. And if it's open and publicly available, like our property recorders offices are, then anybody can go and take a look at the chain of title. It can't be changed. It's been verified. It's auditable. And so consequently, as our property recorders offices are switching over to a blockchain database system to manage all of the titles for all of the properties in that county, what we're going to see is that we will no longer need to go through that process of title verification. We will no longer need title insurance. And this is key for those real estate litigating attorneys out there. There's no need for litigation.
Seems like the level of accuracy would be so much higher, too.
You know, and so there's this conversation among blockchain circles that the information is only as good as it was at the time of recordation. But I think that's true today. So it really doesn't matter what kind of data management system that you're using to record and store data, if it's Amazon Web Services, if it's a server in your back, your back room or your basement, or if you're using a blockchain, you've got to have a double verification system in place before you hit that proverbial record button, right, to send it to the blockchain. So maybe you have a second person, so two-party verification or multi-factor authentication on a blockchain. But if you've got that and the information once stored is there forever, ideally, if the blockchain is largely decentralized.
Would save so much time, too, with duplicate efforts, I would think.
Absolutely.
And so I work through the bar with a lot of solo and small firms. Is this something that a solo practitioner could put into practice?
Well, we won't be starting up our own blockchains because we're not big enough, right? So blockchains kind of work like the hive mind, ideally. They're supposed to work like the internet, ideally. But we're seeing blockchains that are being installed on a limited basis, being integrated into existing and prospective business processes in larger organizations like IBM, Maersk, Walmart, Microsoft, the Rockefeller
It's a trickle down,
Foundation.
though. Eventually,
Yes.
we'll be able to see those benefits throughout the legal profession.
Oh,
and
yes.
eventually, solo and small firm users could probably sort of harness this. And I hate to say this because I was support staff, but it would eliminate at least a small portion of support staff and sort of automate things for attorneys.
Yeah, there's going to be an awful lot of automation that's going to happen through the use of blockchain because of second-generation blockchain technology called smart contracts. And so this was invented only about 5 years ago. So if this is the first time you're hearing about it, you are not late to the game. You are arriving exactly on time. So if you've ever heard of the Ethereum blockchain network or Ether, which is their digital token, right? So they came after Bitcoin. Basically, it's like version 2.0 of blockchain technology. The first version that we saw was Bitcoin, where the application was the blockchain and still is. Ethereum came along and its inventor Vitalik Buterin, and he was like, wow, what if I could have self-executing smart contracts on the blockchain? So we talked about the storage of titles in a real estate case, but it can actually do so much more now because of the employment of more inclusive and adaptive programming languages, which can operate on a blockchain, much like we have lots of different programs that operate on the internet, or you have a lot of different applications that work on your cell phone. So smart contracts is like an application that would work on your smartphone, except it works on a blockchain network. And so what's really cool about it is you can program if this, then that rules, like if I insert $1 into a vending machine and I press code B3, then it will dispense my Snickers bar, right? Hopefully. And so there's this trust mechanism at work here. The trust that, if you follow the steps, you trust the vending machine to spit out your
that
Snicker
will
bars.
happen.
Right. And so smart contracts work like this on a blockchain. And because they're written in a programming language that employs Turing complete, which is a really fancy engineering term that means that basically the universe of possibilities of contracts can be translated into programming language, much like I can translate my speech into Spanish. And so when you do that and then you set it out there on a blockchain and you hit the go button, then it monitors these conditions that you've told it to monitor, like maybe your funds in escrow for purchasing that property. And then at a predetermined time, which us lawyers call conditions precedent, once the condition precedent is triggered, it will release the funds. So like you were suggesting, there are a lot of functions that are going to be automated. And so while we're concerned that we're not going to be needed, there's this whole new opportunity for attorneys to be retooled and re-educated, because we really need lawyers to be assisting in the drafting and in the programming of these smart contracts.
And anything lawyers can find to help save time, I know they're very interested in. It seems to me that this automation will not only make them more efficient, but it will speed up for them so many administrative processes.
Errors,
yes.
too, yeah.
Yeah, so many administrative processes that they're currently having to do by hand.
Yeah, a lot of it is going to be automated. Absolutely.
So you, apart from blockchain, the seminar CLE that you just were presenting at, you talked about fintech and current applications in law. Let's transition into that.
Okay. I have a big
You
smile
are an
on my
expert.
face. Yeah.
She's very excited to do that.
Wow, that's like a really big label. I'm feeling the pressure now.
I'm learning. So
Well, it's really kind of crazy because I really didn't know anything about financial technology. What happened is I'm on the technology law committee, and they were like, hey, why don't you talk to us about blockchain and smart contracts? That was last year. And there's just been this ridiculous journey in the last year, and I've really just drowned in blockchain and fintech. And I have these new clients, and they're involved in fintech. And if you're listening and you're like, I don't know what fintech is, I didn't know what fintech was a year ago, right? It's financial technology. You're like, well, I don't have anything to do with finance. And well, neither did I until about a year ago. And so it was really kind of crazy because there were all of these words and sort of industry things that were happening with blockchain, and all of it had to do with finance. And I'm like, I don't understand, because I'm operating over here like in network infrastructure, data management, and smart contracts. But there's this whole other side of blockchain application and usage. And actually, this is where things are happening right now. This is actually where we're seeing the most mobility and commercial applications is with banking. And it's like, well, but I thought that the American banks and financial institutions were wholly opposed against blockchain and Bitcoin and digital currencies. And I was like, well, yeah, until they figured out how to integrate it into their existing processes and how to make money off of it, right? So they were opposed for a couple of reasons. One, they really like regulations. Bank enjoy regulations, and they won't take any action until they have regulatory guidance, even if they don't need it. Like, they didn't need it as it pertained to Bitcoin applications, but they were like, we don't care, we're waiting for regulations anyway. And then the second thing was that they realized that they were losing a lot of revenue because people were figuring out that they could convert their dollars to Bitcoin and then sort of reconvert the Bitcoin into the local currency of wherever they were located. Like in Peru, it would be the sol, so I could send money back to my family for pennies and not pay the bank transaction fees. So the banks were like, yeah, this is a major problem. We need to do something about this.
Maybe we need to look at this a little bit closer.
So boom, they start developing out their own blockchains, issuing their own digital tokens for the purposes of, transactions.
The fees associated with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So to keep the transactions in-house, and also because the transaction time for some of these larger transactions would take days. But if they're converting it into their own token, like the JP Morgan token, for example, and then unconvert it on the other side of the transaction, it takes minutes. But I'll tell you what really got me excited, and this is what prompted me to take some real classes in this over at Oxford in England, is I learned that this whole process has reduced the cost of banking so substantially that it has now become profitable for banks to reach out and offer banking and financial services, bundled or unbundled, to the world's 1 billion who are unbanked, and also to the 2.5 billion that are underbanked. And so the real benefit, the exciting thing that we're seeing here is with human rights and with the adoption and implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Economic Development Goal 16.9, is because these people were completely financially excluded. zero opportunity. They didn't have an ID. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't get health care services. They couldn't
Legal
open a
services.
bank account, right? They have to operate in cash. It's very dangerous to walk around with cash in many, many parts of the world and even many, many parts of the United States. And this is really revolutionizing life and opportunity for them. So we're going to have a lot more clients that we can provide services to.
Right. Well, I think that came full circle. That was incredibly exciting and entertaining. And honestly, I learned a lot more than I've learned in the past 2 years on Bitcoin. So thank you for that. Looks like we've reached the end of our program. I want to thank Anessa Santos for joining us today. And I want to thank my co-host, Renee Thompson.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
me.
It's been fantastic. This was so exciting. So if our listeners have any questions or wish to follow up, how can they reach you, Anessa?
Sure, absolutely. Well, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn as Anessa Allen Santos. Of course, you can also look me up at the Florida Bar. You can give me a call on my mobile at area code 239-595-3794. Or you can email me at anessa@intellilaw.io. That's INTELLILAW.io.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Florida Bar Podcast. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please rate us and review us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcasting app is. I'm Karla Eckhardt.
I'm Renee Thompson.
And that's our show. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center and produced by the broadcast professionals at Legal Talk Network. If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com, subscribe via iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and RSS. Find the Florida Bar, Legal Fuel, the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center, and Legal Talk Network on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Or download the free app from Legal Talk Network in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.